Hi, in this video let us see the domain and range of different functions, that is a quadratic function and square root function and division function. First let us see this function f of x equal to 1 plus x square. The simple function that x, that is the set of all possible inputs, is the domain, and that domain can be any real value, either positive, negative or zero, any real value. So that domain is the minus infinity to infinity. It can be minus infinity to any infinity, that is any real value that output will be exist. And while writing this range, that is a set of all possible output values, whereas that input values are from minus infinity to infinity. Here that output it will be 1 to infinity, because when x equal to 0, then that output will be, when x equal to 0, that f of x equal to 1 plus 0, that is the 1. And for x greater than 0, that will be some positive value, then f of x will be positive value. And even for x less than 0, that is the negative values of the x, also that x square will be positive value. So that range will be 1 to infinity, that is including 1. That is when x equal to 0, that output is 1, and when x less than 0 or x greater than 0, that f of x will be in some positive value. So that range will be 1 to infinity. Domain is minus infinity to infinity, and range is 1 to infinity, that is including y. Next, f of x equal to 1 minus square root of x. And we know that restrictions of the domain, that is the term, the value under the square root should not be a negative value. If it is a negative value, it will be a imaginary term, that is a complex value. It will not be a real value, so it will not be exist. So that the term under the value under the square root should be greater than or equal to 0. Here the value is the only x, so that x should be greater than or equal to 0 to exist that function. That x should be greater than or equal to 0. So the domain is 0 to infinity, including 0. So we have to put this square bracket at the 0. When x is the 0, that f of x equal to 1. When x equal to 0, that x should be greater than or equal to 0. Minimum value of the x is 0. When x equal to 0, that f of x, that is f of 0 is 1. And when x greater than 0, that is some positive value. So here we get some positive value. So 1 minus some value, that is less than the 1. So that range is the minus infinity to 1. That is the maximum value is the 1 and including 1. So that range equal to minus infinity to 1 including 1. So we have to put this square bracket, that is the including 1. That excludes the minus infinity value. So range is minus infinity to 1. Domain is 0 to infinity for the function 1 minus root x. Next let us see another function, that f of x equal to square root of 5x plus 10. 5x plus 10 should be greater than or equal to 0. So what is the x? Let us find the x, that is 5x greater than or equal to minus 10 and x greater than or equal to minus 10 by 5, that is a minus 2, that x greater than or equal to minus 2. So the domain is minus 2 to infinity. Next let us find the range. That range is here at x equal to minus 2, x equal to minus 2, then this term will be 0. And by increasing this minus 2 to infinity, this value will be increases. So that range is from 0 to infinity, that is when x equal to minus 2, that is a 0, this function will be 0, the output will be 0. And as the x increases from minus 2 to infinity, that output also increases from 0 to infinity, that range equal to 0 to infinity including 0. Domain is minus 2 to infinity. This we obtain by writing that 5x plus 10 greater than or equal to 0, because this term is under the square root of the square root, so this should be positive value. So f of x equal to square root of 5x plus 10, then domain is the minus 2 to infinity including minus 2. When it is a x equal to minus 2, this term will be 0. And that x should be greater than or equal to minus 2 to infinity, that is the domain, that is a set of input values. And range equal to 0 to infinity including 0. So we have to write this closed bracket. Let us see the next function, that is g of x equal to square root of x square minus 3x. Here also that x square minus 3x should be greater than or equal to 0. Then we take the x as common, that is x minus 3. X into x minus 3 greater than or equal to 0. From this value, this x greater than or equal to 0 or x minus 3 greater than or equal to 0. So x greater than or equal to 3 and x less than or equal to 0. So domain is a minus infinity to 0 union 3 to infinity. That is the, it excludes the 0 to 3, that is the, that should be greater than or equal to 3 and it is a less than or equal to 3, that is a minus infinity to 0 union of 3 to infinity including 3, because this is the equal to x greater than or equal to 3, so that 3 can be included. Similarly here 0 can be included, so minus infinity to 0 union of 3 to infinity. Range, that is a 0 to infinity, that can be, that output can be any positive value. This value, the resultant of the x square minus 3x, can be 0 to infinity. This can be 0, so this range can be 0 to infinity including 0. Okay, next let us see the another function, that is f of t equal to 4 by 3 minus t. Here the denominator should not be equal to 0. If it is a 0, that will be 4 by 0. You cannot divide by the 0. That is an undefined function. That function will be undefined. So this 3 minus t should not be equal to 0, except this 3 minus 2 equal to 0. That input may be all the real values. So except 3, that is minus infinity to 3 union of 3 to infinity, that excludes the 3, that should not be a 3. So we have to write these open brackets, that is minus infinity to 3 and 3 to infinity. Okay, it allows the all the values. Okay, it allows the set of all real values set of all real values except 3. You can write like this. Okay, that is except 3, that can be any real value. And range, that is when t equal to except 3, that is when t equal to 0, this term will be 0. So excluding 0, that can be, that range, that output can be minus infinity to infinity, that is a minus infinity to 0, that excludes the 0, union of 0 to infinity. These are the domain and range of the different functions. Let us revise all these functions. That is a 1 plus x square. It allows the all real values. So the domain is a minus infinity to infinity, and range is a 1 to infinity. That is, here there is a square function. So for even that x is the negative value, this will be positive. So the minimum value is the 1, 1 to infinity. The range is the 1 to infinity. Here 1 plus x square minus infinity to infinity, that any real value can be existed, can be a input value. So domain is minus infinity to infinity, and range is the 1 to infinity including 1. 1 minus root of x, such that x, should be greater than or equal to 0. So the domain is 0 to infinity including 0, and when it is x is the 0 to infinity, that value can be minus infinity to 1. When x equal to 0, this will be, the y output will be 1. So when input is increasing from 0 to some real value or infinity, that will be decreases from 1. That maximum value is the 1, and it allows the all real values that less than 1. So that is the range is minus infinity to 1. Square root of 5x plus 10, then 5x plus 10 greater than or equal to 0, then we get the domain is a minus 2 to infinity, and 0 to infinity is the range. Similarly, for square root of x square minus 3x, it excludes the 0, that 0, it including, that is a minus infinity to 0 and 3 to infinity, that is a, it doesn't allow the, that is a greater than 0 and less than 3, and 4 by 3 minus 2, that t should not be equal to 3. If it is a 3, 3 minus 3, this term will be 0. So excluding 3, okay, that is the minus infinity to 3, union of 3 to infinity, excluding 3, it can be all real values, that is the minus infinity to infinity except 3. That range is the minus infinity to 0, 0 to infinity, excluding 0, that outputs may be minus infinity to infinity. Thank you for watching.